All of our lives are defined by the places we're connected to and the people we hold close.
Chào Thai.
My name is William Lee Adams, and I'm a Vietnamese-American journalist and an author. I was born 6 years after the Vietnam War ended. I'm here to explore a country that's helped shape me. For me, it all flows from the war that brought my parents together. Two people born 12 time zones apart, thrust together to build a life. My family lived in America, and my big brother John was my best friend. But 2 years ago, he passed away. I have a lot of unfinished business. I want to bring him home, essentially. This is where he was born. This is where he was happiest. And this is where so many people who loved him and took care of him still are. I'm traveling across the country, starting in the capital city, Hanoi, and ending over 1,500 kilometers away in Ho Chi Minh City, where my family still lives in Banana Garden Market.
Oh, he's so well hidden.
It's the most incredible journey I've ever taken. And I have to confront my family's difficult relationship with Vietnam. My father and your grandfather would have been fighting against each other.
I lost my grandfather, right?
Will putting my brother to rest help me make peace with the past? I'm in Hanoi, Vietnam's capital city. And like other early risers, I've come to Lake Quan Kiam. It's my first morning back in Vietnam, a country I last visited nearly 20 years ago, and some things seem to have changed.
We've got dancers busting that move. This is incredible.
There's a real buzz, and the city seems more confident. I think the last time I was here, I felt a bit like a fraud. I didn't think I could claim a Vietnamese identity because I was born abroad.
I know I'm of this place, and yet I'm completely removed from it.
I grew up in the deep south of the US in the 1980s, just years after the Vietnam War had ended.
There was a lot of animosity and resentment towards Vietnamese people at that time, and my father really contributed to that narrative because he told me, you're not mixed race, you're not biracial, you're white. My mom did the same thing. She said, oh, you're not Vietnamese, you're American. And so I grew up ostensibly as a white American boy. So I keep seeing the same people on loop running around. It seems really inclusive. You see people of all ages, you see foreigners. This lake really is the center of public life.
I'm optimistic about this journey. I think that generally speaking, people are so warm and welcoming. But I do worry sometimes that maybe some people do remember the past.
With music and news 24 hours a day, this is Armed Radio Service, Vietnam.
My parents met in Vietnam. In 1968, my father was a nurse. He pulled bullets out of bones. And my mother at that time was a widower who had a young son, my brother John. My dad fell in love with my mom and little John, and in 1973, he asked my mom to move to the US. And her family reached the decision that she should go, but she needs to leave John in Vietnam because she doesn't know my dad. Is he a good person or a bad person? So why don't you learn English, test out your husband, and then we'll send John. Before immigrating to the US, my mother used to work in the family market stall in Saigon, in South Vietnam. these marketplaces are still the lifeblood of the country.
So I'm off to meet Leela. She runs food tours, she's a food influencer, and I'm not gonna struggle to find her because I've been following her for months. Oh, Leela! Hi, nice to meet you. Oh, how are you?
Like the women in my family, Leela's mother also ran a market stall.
So we are on the side of Dong Xuân Market. Dong Xuân Market is one of the largest and also oldest market in Hanoi.
I think that Vietnamese food gives me a route into Vietnamese culture.
And you smell that?
Oh yeah, I smell
You
that.
recognize that tangy? This dish is one of the most exciting dishes in Hanoi.
It connects you because you can sit down with any Vietnamese around the world and they'll have an opinion on food. I definitely taste the tomato.
Yes, the rice vinegar, the zambon, is so nice and tangy. It wakes you up.
And it seems so communal, like people are really gathering.
I think market and food in general is kind of like the heart of Vietnamese culture. It's like food is that important. I feel like it's related to like family and communities, because when you literally sit down and sharing a meal with somebody, the loved one, the friends, and kind of like get to know a stranger sit right next to you too. Like, look at this. You're sharing a space with somebody that you meet for the first time.
I can tell this is really close to your heart. When you were a kid, did you help your mom cook?
No, I did not. My mom was selling pho in the market. From my mom or my grandparent generation, they work so hard like that, 7 days per week, don't take a day off to put you through the school. So I never realized that how hard my mom had to work.
Now, you chose this particular pho restaurant. Why was that?
The local love it here. I think her chicken is delicious. And then I think she reminds about my mother a lot. She opened this pho shop for about 32 years already.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to taste 32 years
I
of
know,
broth.
right? Me too. I mean, I come here often, but I just love it. The scene and everything. Just
It really is a scene. It's funny. People are driving by, they're looking at her. It's like she's a local celebrity.
Yes, yes. The chicken here is getting so much attention. Em cảm ơn chị.
Okay. There's something very comforting about that.
It is.
I've never had the Hanoi pho gà, chicken pho,
yeah.
and it tastes fantastic.
Yeah.
To be honest, when I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of Vietnamese food because my mom was quite isolated culturally. We always had fast food or microwave food. It wasn't really home cooked. And I understand now why that was.
Our mother, they did what they did to raise who we are today and give us a life.
Yeah. And here we are eating chicken pho
I
in
know,
Hanoi. So
on the side of the street. It's
it all
like-
worked out.
Yes.
Pure luxury.
Yeah, and I think the Vietnam War, or as we say, American War here, divided to the country, and it led to the part that so many like Vietnamese people, like the mother, had to leave home and go to a different country where she don't speak the language and literally had to build life on the ground to raising her children. But now we have so many Vietnamese all over the world, and who like you, spreading the love for Vietnamese culture and food. So because of that, it's really more people in the world that know more about our food, our culture, our people.
My mother left my brother in Vietnam when she immigrated to the US.
And then in the years that followed, John got very ill. Essentially, he had a fever and his brain started to swell.
But Vietnam didn't have the doctors or the medicine. It was still recovering from the war.
So he started to lose control of his legs and his arms and his brain. But my aunts had hope. They said, if he goes to the United States, perhaps he can be treated, perhaps he'll walk again. And so they told my mother he was unwell. However, they didn't tell her the full extent of his illness. The day she picked John up at the airport, he didn't recognize her. And he was no longer walking or talking.
Mom, you don't have to lean back.
The doctors in the US couldn't reverse John's condition. Caring for him became the focus of our family, especially for my mother.
Oh, Mom.
Yeah.
Hey, sorry.
I'm partly doing this trip for my mother, and I know she wants to come back to Vietnam, but she won't come. She blames her knees or she has too much to do, but I'm thinking this is a down payment on a future visit.
You look like an old 90 years old woman.
Well, aren't you an old 90-year-old woman?
Well, not quite.
Lo mi đó?
Đang ngồi coi YouTube, the dog show.
The one with the chihuahua.
Yes.
William và anh Hải ở Việt Nam bây giờ.
Good. You take care of him, huh?
Yeah. Chúng tôi nói chuyện mỗi ngày. Anh ấy rất là vui, hạnh phúc.
Good.
I think in the past, when I was really young, John came between me and my mother. But on this trip, I feel like John has brought us together.
And Mom, how do I say this? Trước khi tôi đi chùa, mẹ muốn nói something anh Hải.
Tell him I miss him very, very much and I will see him soon.
Đúng rồi.
I will see him, okay? And your father too. Okay? I miss him a lot, William. Well, you take good care of him, huh? You make sure you put his picture at the temple, okay?
Có ở đây.
Good. Bye-bye, John. Bye-bye, John. Love you, John.
John and I, we were really raised together. He came to the United States in 1981, the year that I was born. He was 13 at the time. And so we were side by side the whole way. When I was a baby, I would play in his wheelchair and I would squeeze the back of the seat and pull out the foam, and he'd be sitting on the floor next to me. I didn't understand the sadness that that wheelchair carried for my family. When I was a kid, we were both very isolated. I didn't speak till I was 6. I was just so fearful and anxious. And he didn't speak because it wasn't really an option. We understood each other. We had this deep bond.
As an adult, John lived in a nursing home in Atlanta, in the US. When he passed away in 2022, we held a service for him in a local Buddhist temple.
Chào cô khác khỏe không?
I got really curious about incense after my brother's funeral, and the monks said that smoke, to many Vietnamese people, connects this world with the spirit world. And I read that in Hanoi, they have this incense village that ships the bamboo stick, which is used to make the incense, all over Vietnam. So I wanted to see the people behind it.
Chào chú.
Ok.
Tôi tên là William.
Ok, thank you.
Cháu rất vui gặp chú.
The incense village is like a rainbow exploded, and you see bundles of sticks drying and or displayed on the ground. When I spoke to Mr. Long, he made it clear that this is their art.
Nói chung là làm cái nghề này thì đúng là các cụ đã để lại rồi, nhưng mà cũng không phải là ai người ta cũng thích làm cái nghề này thì mới làm được, tại vì nghề này nó quá vất vả so với cả các nghề khác. Thứ nhất là nắng mưa là phải lao ra, là việc ngoài trời rất là quan trọng về vật. Còn người không yêu nghề là không làm được.
Are you proud of the work you do and how important it is to people?
Nói chung để đất nước Việt Nam thì đối với cả các cái nén hương nhang này nó rất là quan trọng để về cái tâm linh. Nếu như về tâm linh mà không có nén hương thì đấy người Việt Nam thành ra người không có tâm với cái cụ. Ai phải có cái ngày lễ hoặc là ngày mất, ngày sinh thì ai phải có cái nén hương. Mà đến người đi làm ăn người ta cũng rất là cần có nén hương nhang để cầu may về cái vận mệnh người ta đi làm ăn.
I'm taking my brother's ashes to Saigon, where he was born. If I bring these incense, will it help our family?
Sorry, with this question, when this is something really
Công mẹ
sensitive.
Our local minders interrupt our filming. It's a reminder of the limited press freedoms in a communist country. I came to this village to learn more about how these incense might be useful or helpful to my brother or my family when we take his ashes to the temple in Saigon. But local authorities suggested that in some way what I was doing was wrong or that it wasn't culturally acceptable. And it just stings, to be honest, because I'm not doing this for any other reason than to make sure my brother is at peace and at rest and to sort of bring closure to myself and to my family and my mother. I'm adamant to move forward. It's time to leave North Vietnam. All right, here we go. 31 to 36. All right. For Vietnamese people, the Reunification Express is the bloodline of the country. It connects most of the major cities. All right, choosing a bunk. I'm gonna stay low. During the Vietnam War, this express railway was bombed all the time, and Vietnamese constantly rebuilt it. Just 15 hours to go. It's a symbol of reunification, of one nation. It's the end of day 4, but I feel like I've been here for 2 or 3 weeks. When I got here, it was just a buzz of excitement. Everything was fresh, in your face, vivid, and now things have gone a bit gray. When I was at the incense village, it felt like I had done something bad or wrong and should feel shame. But a few days later, you know, it's fair enough. People do have different beliefs. We're motivated to honor the dead, to remember the dead. And in doing so, we remind ourselves about life.
What do you think John would make of making a documentary about this?
He'd be laughing the whole time. He was always laughing about anything and everything. It was this joy, honestly, everything made him laugh. We'd watch baseball, which honestly I found a little boring. But you know, the ball's hit, he's cackling, and I think he would have liked being the center of attention as well.
I've come to the city of Hoi An. For centuries, it was an important trading port. Since then, it's become a traveler's favorite. People flock to its atmospheric old town, which rests on a river.
When I last visited Hoi An, there were like 5 of us on the main street. It was not a tourist hotspot. And when I came back, I was really worried that maybe it might have lost its soul because everyone all over the world is coming to Hoi An now. But I think there are certain elements to Hoi An that are so strong, they'll never change. The Portuguese, the Chinese, the Japanese were all there. It's this gorgeous amalgamation of so many different cultures and art forms. I've been reading about people going on the river and lighting lanterns and sending out wishes and messages to people. So I'd like to do that for my brother. I think for me, there's a lot of lingering guilt. He was my first friend and my best friend. But as we got older, I became more independent. And eventually I left home. And in leaving home, I left him. It's high season in Hoi An, and on the dock, it was pure chaos. There were so many people, so many boats. It was like a traffic jam in the water. But once I got in the boat, and once the rower took me a little further down the river, I was really on my own. been 2 years, but there's still this well of sadness. I was thinking about what could have been and what was. My family in Vietnam had sent John to the United States with this really sincere hope that doctors could make him better. But it never happened. But also remembering that John had a superpower, which was to always be happy, always laughing. When I lit the lantern and set it off, it sort of flowed and bobbed. Hanoi, em nhớ anh. Xin lỗi, xin lỗi. For a minute, it would be out of sight. Another boat would pass and I couldn't see it. Then it would just bob up again. Em mong muốn anh có thể đi bộ, có thể anh không cần xe lắm. And I would see it in a moment faded away. And I thought of the symmetry about how he died. He went to sleep and he never woke up. He left the world in a sigh. And the lantern sort of did the same. It was a release. I felt like John was saying, it's okay, I'm free. Left or right? I think it's right. There's been this talk for months. Oh mom, I'm taking John's ashes back to Vietnam. Có cà phê sữa đó? This is my cousin and my aunt. Dì Nam và anh hai luôn luôn với nhau, luôn luôn với nhau. Now it's actually time to do it, and that's something completely different.